You think you know what bravery looks like? Wait until you hear the story of Alice Mitchell. On a freezing Tuesday night in Chicago, inside the city's most exclusive restaurant, a crying baby brought a billion-dollar empire to its knees. The father was Harrison Sterling, a man who could buy or destroy anyone in the room. When his heir wouldn't stop screaming, the staff was terrified. The nannies were useless. That's when Alice, a broke waitress on her final warning, did something so shocking, so completely forbidden, that the entire restaurant went silent. She didn't just risk her job, she risked her freedom. But what she found on that baby's body didn't just explain the crying. It solved a crime that the FBI had been tracking for 3 years. This is the true story of how a waitress's split-second decision toppled a dynasty. You need to watch until the very end, because the DNA test results, they change everything. The restaurant was called the Gilded Lily. It wasn't just a place to eat. It was a place where the air smelled like old money and fear. The cheapest bottle of wine on the menu cost more than Alice Mitchell's monthly rent. Alice was 24, exhausted, and barely holding her life together. Her shoes had holes in the soles, her uniform was 2 sizes too big, and her bank account was overdrawn by $40. She needed this shift. She needed the tips. But tonight, the atmosphere in the kitchen was different. It was suffocating. "Listen to me and listen closely," Pierre, the floor manager, hissed at the staff lineup. Pierre was a man who sweated grease and anxiety. "Tonight we have a VIP, a VVVIP. Harrison Sterling is coming in." A murmur went through the line of waiters. Harrison Sterling, the tech mogul, the man who acquired companies just to fire their boards. He was known in the tabloids as the Ice King after the mysterious death of his wife 2 years ago. Since then, he had become a recluse, seen only in tinted SUVs, usually surrounded by bodyguards. "He is bringing his son," Pierre continued, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "The baby is 10 months old. If that child makes a sound, you disappear. If a fork clatters, you disappear. Sterling is looking for a reason to shut a place down tonight." "He's in a mood." Alice swallowed hard. She adjusted her apron. "Pierre," she whispered, "I'm good with kids. I have a—" "You stay away from the table, Alice," Pierre snapped. "You are clumsy. You drop things. You stick to the water station in the back. Do not make eye contact with Mr. Sterling. Do not breathe near him." At 7 p.m. sharp, the heavy oak doors swung open. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Harrison Sterling walked in like he owned the oxygen everyone was breathing. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than Alice's entire education. His face was handsome but hard, like it was carved out of granite. His eyes were dark, scanning the room for threats, or perhaps just imperfections. Behind him trailed an entourage. 2 massive security guards, a nervous-looking personal assistant clutching a tablet, and finally, a woman in a grey nurse's uniform pushing a sleek, black stroller. The restaurant fell silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. "Table 4, Pierre squeaked, bowing so low he almost hit his head on the hostess stand. "Right this way, Mr. Sterling. We have prepared the private corner for you." Harrison didn't speak. He just walked. The nurse followed, looking stressed. The baby in the stroller was whimpering, a low, rhythmic sound that signaled trouble. Alice watched from the shadows of the water station. She felt a strange pull in her chest. She knew that sound. It wasn't just a fussy baby. It was a cry of distress. Harrison sat down. He didn't look at the menu. "Whiskey, neat, and bring warm milk for the boy. The formula in the bag. Make sure it's exactly 98 degrees. Yes, sir. Immediately, sir." The trouble started 10 minutes later. The whimpering turned into a cry, the cry turned into a wail, and then the wail turned into a scream that pierced the elegant atmosphere of the Gilded Lily like a siren. Harrison stiffened. He put his glass down. "Nanny," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Fix it." The nurse, a woman named Brenda, who looked like she hadn't slept in a week, began rocking the stroller frantically. "I'm trying, Mr. Sterling. He just won't settle. I think he's colicky." "I don't pay you for, I think," Harrison snapped. "Pick him up. Silence him." Brenda picked up the baby. It was a beautiful child, wrapped in a blue cashmere blanket, but his face was bright red, contorted in agony. He was thrashing, his tiny fists beating against the nurse's chest. "Whoa! Whoa!" Guests at other tables began to shift uncomfortably. A couple at table 6 signaled for their check. Harrison saw it. His jaw clenched. "Give him the bottle," Harrison ordered. "He won't take it, sir. He spits it out." Brenda was crying now, too. "Useless," Harrison hissed. He stood up, towering over the table. "Give him to me." The billionaire took the screaming infant. He held the boy awkwardly, like a bomb that was about to detonate. He bounced him stiffly. "Leo, stop it! Leo, enough!" The baby screamed louder. It was a raw, guttural sound. Pierre, the manager, rushed over, looking like he was about to faint. "Is everything all right, Mr. Sterling? Perhaps we can offer—" "Get away from me!" Sterling barked. "Your lights are too bright. It's too hot in here. That's why he's crying. Turn down the lights." Pierre scrambled to dim the lights. It didn't help. The baby was turning a terrifying shade of purple. He was gasping between screams. From the back of the room, Alice was gripping a pitcher of water so hard her knuckles were white. Her maternal instincts were screaming louder than the baby. She had a daughter at home, little Mia. She knew the difference between a tantrum and pain. That baby wasn't acting out. That baby was hurting. "He's choking," Alice whispered to herself. "Stay here," another waiter warned her. "Don't get involved, Alice. You'll get fired." But Alice saw something the others didn't. She saw the way the baby was arching his back. She saw the way he was clawing at his own neck. Harrison Sterling was losing his composure. For the first time, the mask of the billionaire slipped, revealing a terrified father who had no idea what to do. He looked ready to shake the child or throw the stroller. "Do something," Harrison yelled at his security guards. "Call the car." "Sir, the car is 5 minutes away," the guard stammered. "He can't breathe," Alice said aloud. She didn't think. She didn't calculate the risk. She dropped the water pitcher. It shattered on the floor. Crash. The room went dead silent, except for the wheezing baby. Alice stepped over the broken glass. She walked straight toward the billionaire's table. "Alice! No!" Pierre hissed, lunging to grab her arm. She shook him off. She walked right up to Harrison Sterling, a man who could ruin her life with a phone call. "Give me the baby," she said. Her voice was steady, though her hands were trembling. Harrison looked at her like she was a bug on his shoe. "Who are you? Get back." "He's not colicky," Alice said, stepping closer, invading his personal space. "He's in pain. Give him to me, or he's going to go into shock." "Security!" Harrison roared. "Get this woman away from my son!" The massive bodyguard stepped forward, reaching for Alice. "Look at his lips!" Alice screamed, pointing at the baby. "They are turning blue. Do you want to be right, or do you want your son to live?" Harrison froze. He looked down at the bundle in his arms. Leo's lips were indeed turning a pale, ghostly blue. The screaming had stopped, replaced by a terrifying silence as the airway closed. Harrison's eyes met Alice's. In that split second, the power dynamic shifted. He wasn't a billionaire. He was a panic-stricken father. He thrust the baby into her arms. "If you hurt him," he whispered, "I will kill you." Alice didn't answer. She took the child. And then, right there in the middle of the 5-star restaurant, she did the unthinkable. The moment the baby was in Alice's arms, she didn't rock him. She didn't shush him. She immediately sat down on the pristine white floor, ignoring the shocked gasps of the diners. She laid baby Leo face down across her knees. "What is she doing?" someone whispered. "She's hurting him," the nurse shrieked. "Stop her!" Alice ignored them. She delivered 5 sharp, firm back blows between the baby's shoulder blades. Thump, thump, thump. Nothing happened. "Get away from him." The bodyguard grabbed Alice's shoulder, his grip like iron. "Let go of me," Alice yelled, twisting away with the ferocity of a mother bear. She flipped the baby over. She placed 2 fingers on the center of his chest and gave 5 quick chest thrusts. Then she flipped him back over. Thump, thump, thump. On the 4th blow, something dislodged. A small, shiny object flew out of the baby's mouth and skittered across the polished wooden floor. Baby Leo gasped, a huge heaving intake of air, and then let out a loud, healthy, angry cry. The blue tint began to fade from his lips almost instantly. Alice slumped, pulling the baby to her chest, rocking him, whispering soft words. "It's okay. You're okay. I've got you." The entire restaurant was frozen. Harrison Sterling stared at the object on the floor. He walked over and picked it up. It was a diamond button, a very specific platinum and diamond button. Harrison's face went pale. He looked from the button to the nurse, Brenda. "This is from your uniform," Harrison said. His voice was no longer loud. It was terrifyingly quiet. "The custom uniforms I had made for the staff. The buttons, they were supposed to be sewn on with reinforced steel thread so they couldn't come loose." Brenda, the nurse, took a step back. I don't know how that got there, sir. He grabs things." Harrison looked at the button, then at his son, who was now calming down in the arms of a waitress covered in sweat and water. But Alice wasn't done. As she held the baby, soothing him, her hand brushed against the back of his neck. She frowned. She felt something. "Sir?" Alice said. She didn't look up. She was looking at the baby's skin. "Thank you," Harrison breathed, stepping forward, his hands shaking as he reached for his son. You saved him. I don't know how to repay you." "Don't take him yet," Alice said sharply. Harrison stopped. "Excuse me?" Alice looked up, her eyes wide with confusion and rising horror. "Sir, how long have you had this nanny?" "Brenda. She's been with us for 2 months, since the last one quit. Why?" Alice shifted the baby's collar. "Look at this." She tilted the baby's head forward. On the back of his neck, right along the hairline, the skin was angry and red. But it wasn't a rash. "What is that?" Harrison demanded, leaning in. "It's adhesive residue," Alice said. She gently rubbed the spot. "And bruising." She turned the baby over. She lifted the expensive cashmere sweater. The baby's stomach was distended, hard as a rock. "He wasn't just choking on a button," Alice said, her voice trembling. "Sir, when was the last time this baby ate?" "The nurse feeds him every 3 hours. I see the logs," Harrison yelled. "No," Alice said, looking straight at the nurse. "This baby is starving. His stomach is full of air from crying for food. And this," she pointed to the residue on the neck. "Someone has been taping something here, or taping him." Harrison turned slowly to look at Brenda. The nurse was no longer looking nervous. She was looking at the exit door. The button didn't fall off, Alice realized, the horror dawning on her. She fed it to him. She fed it to him to silence him because he was crying from hunger. "That's a lie," Brenda screamed. "You crazy waitress! Give me that child!" Brenda lunged, not at Harrison, but at Alice. It happened in a blur. Brenda, desperate and cornered, produced something from her pocket. Not a baby bottle, but a small canister of pepper spray. She aimed it at Alice and the baby. "Back off!" Brenda shrieked. "Everyone back off or I blind the kid!" Chaos erupted. Customers screamed and dove under tables. The bodyguards drew their weapons but couldn't fire. Alice and the baby were in the line of fire. Alice was trapped against the salad bar, clutching the billionaire's son, with a deranged woman 3 feet away holding a weapon. Harrison Sterling, the most powerful man in Chicago, was helpless. "What do you want?" Harrison shouted, hands up. "Money? I'll give you whatever you want." "I want the car keys," Brenda yelled. "And I'm taking the kid as insurance. Hand him over, bitch!" She took a step toward Alice. Alice looked at the baby. He was quiet now, looking up at her with big, trusting eyes. She felt a fierce, burning heat rise in her chest. She thought of her own daughter. She looked at the pepper spray. She looked at the heavy ceramic plate on the table next to her. Alice didn't hand over the baby. Instead, she did the second unthinkable thing of the night. "Here," Alice said, extending her arms as if to pass the baby. Brenda lowered the spray slightly, reaching out with her other hand. "That's it. Nice and slow." As Brenda reached, Alice twisted her body, shielding the baby with her own back, and with her free right hand, she grabbed a bottle of sparkling water from the table and swung it backward with every ounce of strength she had. Crack. The heavy glass bottle connected with Brenda's forehead. The nurse crumpled to the floor, unconscious. The pepper spray skittered away. Silence returned to the gilded lily. Alice stood there, panting, the baby still clutched safely to her chest. She had just assaulted a woman in front of 50 witnesses. Harrison Sterling stared at her. He stared at his unconscious employee. He stared at his son. He walked over to Alice. He didn't take the baby immediately. He looked her up and down, at her cheap shoes, her stained apron, her defiant, terrified eyes. "What is your name?" he asked. "Alice. Alice Mitchell." Harrison nodded slowly. "Well, Alice Mitchell, you're fired." The restaurant gasped. "Excuse me?" Alice asked, tears welling in her eyes. "I just saved your son." "You are fired from this restaurant," Harrison corrected, a strange light in his eyes. "Because you are coming with me. Tonight." I can't," Alice stammered. "I have a daughter. I can't just leave with a stranger." "Bring her," Harrison said. He signaled to his guards to secure the nurse. "We are going to the hospital to get my son checked, and then we are going to my estate. Because you noticed things my own doctors missed, and I need to know why." Alice hesitated. She knew she should say no. She knew rich men like this were dangerous. But as she looked down at Leo, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Now that the redness had faded from his face, she saw a birthmark behind his ear. A tiny star-shaped mark. Alice's blood ran cold. The room spun. Her daughter, Mia, had the exact same birthmark. And 3 years ago, Alice had given birth to twins. But the doctors had told her the boy was stillborn. They had never let her see the body. Alice looked up at Harrison Sterling, the billionaire who had suddenly appeared in Chicago 2 years ago with a newborn adopted son. "Okay," Alice whispered. "I'll come." Because she wasn't just saving a billionaire's baby anymore. She was holding a ghost. The ride to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and silent fury. Harrison Sterling rode in the ambulance with Leo, refusing to let go of the child's hand. Alice followed in the back of a police cruiser, not as a suspect, but as a witness. At St. Jude's Medical Center, the VIP wing was cleared. Doctors swarmed. Alice sat on a leather chair in the waiting room, her adrenaline crashing, leaving her shaking and cold. An hour later, Harrison emerged. He looked 10 years older than he had in the restaurant. He had discarded his suit jacket. His white shirt was stained with Leo's formula and sweat. "You were right," Harrison said, his voice hollow. "Malnutrition, dehydration, and they found traces of sedatives in his blood. That woman, Brenda, she was drugging him to make him sleep so she wouldn't have to deal with him." Alice closed her eyes, letting out a shaky breath. "Is he going to be okay?" "He will be. Because of you." Harrison walked over to her. He pulled a checkbook from his pocket. "I want to write you a check. $10,000 for tonight." Alice looked at the checkbook, then up at his steel-grey eyes. "I don't want your money, Mr. Sterling." Harrison paused, pen hovering. "Everyone wants money, especially a waitress who lives—" "Where do you live, Alice?" "The South Side, in the flats." "Then take the money." "No." Alice stood up. "You said I was coming with you. You said I was hired. I want a job. I want to make sure nobody ever hurts that little boy again. Money runs out. A purpose doesn't." Harrison studied her. He saw something in her jawline, a stubbornness that matched his own. "Fine. You're the new head nanny. Live-in position. Salary is $80,000 a year. You start tonight." "I have a condition," Alice said, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was the moment. "I have a daughter. Mia. She's the same age as Leo. I can't leave her." "Bring her," Harrison said dismissively. "The estate has 20 bedrooms. I'm sure we can find space for one more child." The stop at Alice's apartment was a reality check for the billionaire. His convoy of black SUVs idled in front of a peeling, brick tenement building where the street lights flickered and the sidewalk was cracked. Harrison insisted on walking Alice to her door, flanked by 2 guards. The smell of stale cigarettes and boiled cabbage permeated the hallway. When Alice unlocked her door, the babysitter, an elderly neighbor named Mrs. Gable, looked up from the tiny, worn-out sofa. "Alice? You're early. And who is this?" Mrs. Gable stared at the man in the custom Italian shirt, standing in the cramped kitchenette. "We're leaving, Mrs. Gable," Alice said, rushing to the bedroom. "Pack Mia's things." She picked up her daughter. Mia was sleeping, her thumb in her mouth. She had the same dark curls as Alice, and Alice's breath hitched, the exact same nose as the baby in the hospital. As Alice packed her meager belongings into 2 duffel bags, Harrison stood by the door, looking uncomfortable. He saw the empty fridge. He saw the eviction notice pinned to the corkboard. He saw a framed photo of Alice, heavily pregnant, looking alone and terrified. "Where is the father?" Harrison asked quietly. Alice zipped up a bag. "He left before they were born. Said he wasn't ready to be a man." "They?" Harrison caught the word. Alice froze. She hadn't meant to say it. "Mia," she corrected quickly. "Before Mia was born." She couldn't tell him yet. Not until she was sure. If she told a billionaire she suspected his adopted son was her stolen baby, he would think she was crazy. He would have her thrown out, or worse, committed to a psych ward. She needed proof. The drive to the Sterling estate took 40 minutes. It was less of a house and more of a fortress. High stone walls, iron gates, and a driveway that wound through manicured forests. When they arrived, the staff was waiting in a line. The house manager, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins, looked down her nose at Alice's worn sneakers and the sleeping child in her arms. "This is Alice," Harrison announced to the staff. "She is in charge of Leo. Her word is final regarding his diet and schedule. If anyone has a problem with that, they can leave tonight." He turned to Alice. "Mrs. Higgins will show you to the nursery suite. Leo will be discharged in the morning. Get some sleep." He turned to leave but stopped. "And Alice?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you." Alice watched him walk up the grand staircase, a lonely king in a silent castle. Once in the nursery suite, a set of rooms larger than her entire apartment building, Alice laid Mia down in a crib that looked like it belonged to a princess. She walked into the adjoining room, Leo's room. It was empty, waiting for his return. She went to the changing table. She opened the drawer. She needed to know. She pulled out a discarded onesie Leo had worn earlier that day, one that had been brought back with his things. She brought it to her nose. It smelled of lavender baby wash and something else, a faint, medicinal smell. She looked at the tag. It was hand-stitched. Sterling Air. Alice reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She opened her photo gallery to a picture taken minutes after she gave birth, before the doctors sedated her. It was blurry, taken by a kind nurse who had been fired shortly after. In the photo there were 2 bundles, one pink, one blue. She zoomed in on the blue bundle. The ear was visible. Just behind it, a tiny star-shaped mark. Alice's hands shook. She walked back to Mia's crib and gently brushed the hair away from her daughter's ear. There it was, the matching star. Tears streamed down Alice's face. Leo wasn't adopted. He was stolen, and she was standing in the house of the man who had him. 3 weeks passed. Life at the Sterling estate settled into a strange, tense rhythm. Alice was efficient, protective, and quiet. Under her care, Leo transformed. The pale, screaming baby became a laughing, chubby-cheeked boy who crawled with the speed of a sprinter. And Mia was thriving, too. Harrison had ordered the kitchen to prepare meals for both children, and he had even, awkwardly, bought a high chair for Mia so she could sit next to Leo during breakfast. Seeing them together was like seeing a mirror image. They had the same laugh, the same way of crinkling their noses when they didn't like the mashed peas. Harrison noticed it too. One rainy afternoon, Harrison came home early from the office. He found Alice in the playroom. She was sitting on the floor, building a block tower, while Leo and Mia destroyed it. Harrison leaned against the doorframe, watching. For a moment, the icy facade melted. He looked peaceful. "They look like siblings," Harrison remarked, taking a sip of his scotch. Alice's heart skipped a beat. She didn't look up. "Babies often look alike at this age, sir." "No." Harrison walked into the room. He sat down on the leather ottoman. "It's more than that. They have a connection. Look at them." Leo was handing Mia a block. Mia took it and babbled something back. They were communicating in a language only they understood. "Where did you adopt him from?" Alice asked. She tried to keep her voice casual, but her pulse was thundering in her ears. "I mean, the agency must have matched him well with you." Harrison's face darkened. The peace vanished. "It wasn't a standard agency. After my wife, Catherine, died, I was in a bad place. I wanted a part of her to live on, but we never had children. My aunt Lydia, she arranged it. She said she found a private situation, a young mother who couldn't keep the child and wanted a closed adoption. No names, no records, just a handover." "A closed adoption," Alice repeated. "Did you ever see the mother?" "No. Lydia handled everything. She said the mother was a drug addict who didn't want the money, just wanted to be free of the burden." Alice gripped the wooden block in her hand, so hard the corner dug into her palm. A drug addict. That was the story they told him. "And the medical records?" Alice pressed. "Did you get his birth certificate?" "Of course. But it was amended. It lists me as the father." Harrison looked at her suspiciously. "Why all the questions, Alice?" Because, Alice said, looking him in the eye, Leo has no medical history in his file. If he gets sick, we don't know his genetics. We don't know what he's allergic to. Harrison sighed. You're right. You're always right. It's annoying. He stood up. Lydia is coming for dinner tonight. She wants to meet the miracle worker who fixed my son. Be ready at 7. And wear something... Not that. He gestured to her plain grey uniform. Wear something nice. You're dining with us. The dinner was a disaster waiting to happen. Lydia Sterling was a woman made of diamonds and venom. She was in her 60s, wearing a gown that cost more than Alice's life earnings. She sat at the head of the table, sipping champagne and eyeing Alice like a hawk eyeing a field mouse. So, Lydia purred, slicing her steak. This is the waitress, the one who assaulted poor Brenda. She saved Leo's life, Aunt Lydia, Harrison said sharply. Brenda was abusing him. Brenda was strict, Lydia dismissed. Children need discipline. But I suppose a woman of your background, Alice, prefers a more chaotic approach. Alice sat straight, her hands folded in her lap. She was wearing a simple navy dress she had bought at a thrift store, but she wore it with dignity. I prefer an approach where the child isn't starving, Mrs. Sterling. Lydia's eyes narrowed. Cheeky. I wonder where Harrison finds these strays. Alice has a daughter, Harrison interjected, trying to deflect the tension. Mia. She's upstairs. Another child. Lydia dropped her fork. Harrison, this is not a daycare. You are raising the heir to the Sterling Empire. You cannot have shantytown children running around spreading germs. Mia is clean, Alice said, her voice low and dangerous, and she is well behaved. I'm sure, Lydia sneered. Tell me, Alice, who is the father of your bastard? Some line cook? A truck driver? Lydia, that's enough! Harrison slammed his hand on the table. It's okay, Alice said quietly. She looked directly at Lydia. His father is a man who doesn't know he exists, a man who was lied to. The air in the room froze. Lydia stopped chewing. She stared at Alice. For a second, a flicker of genuine fear crossed the old woman's face. She looked at Alice's eyes, the shape, the color. Then she looked at Harrison. I see, Lydia said, her voice tight. Well, we should check on the children. I want to see my great-nephew. They moved to the nursery. Alice's stomach was in knots. She felt like a gazelle walking into a lion's den. In the nursery, Leo and Mia were asleep in separate cribs. Lydia walked over to Leo. She smoothed his blanket. Then she walked over to Mia. She stared down at the sleeping girl. She saw the dark curls. She saw the face. And then she saw it. Mia had shifted in her sleep, and her ear was exposed. The star-shaped birthmark was visible in the dim light of the nightlight. Lydia gasped. It was a small, sharp intake of breath, but Alice heard it. Lydia spun around, her face pale beneath her makeup. She is a sweet child, Lydia stammered. We must go. I have a headache. She rushed out of the room, brushing past Harrison. Aunt Lydia? Harrison called out, confused. Alice stood by the cribs, her heart pounding. She knows. Lydia knew about the birthmark, which meant Lydia had seen the babies when they were born, which meant Lydia was the one who was in the delivery room, behind the surgical mask, telling Alice that her son was dead. Alice waited until Harrison had escorted his aunt out. When he returned, he looked exhausted. I apologize for her, Harrison said, loosening his tie. She's old-fashioned. Harrison, Alice said. It was the first time she had used his first name. He looked at her surprised. I need access to the library, she said. Specifically the safe where you keep the legal documents. I need to file Leo's vaccination records, and I need his birth certificate number. The safe is biometric, Harrison said. Only I can open it. Then open it for me. Please. Tomorrow. Harrison stepped closer to her. The tension in the room shifted from anger to something else. He was inches away from her. He smelled of cedar and rain. You care about him as if he were your own, Harrison whispered. I do, Alice breathed. And what about me? Harrison asked, his voice vulnerable. Do you care about the man, or just the job? Alice looked up at him. She was falling for him. It was the cruelest twist of all. She was falling for the man who had her son. I care, she whispered. Harrison leaned in. He kissed her. It was soft at first, then desperate, a release of 2 years of loneliness. Alice kissed him back, tears pricking her eyes. But as he pulled away, smiling, Alice felt a knife of guilt in her gut. She was about to destroy his world. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house had shifted. Harrison was lighter, happier. He touched Alice's hand when he passed her the coffee. He played with Mia and Leo before leaving for work. I'll open the safe tonight, he promised with a wink, before getting into his limousine. But Alice couldn't wait until tonight. She knew Lydia. Lydia was a shark. If she had recognized the birthmark, she was already moving. Alice waited until the staff was busy with lunch prep. She went to Harrison's home office. She knew she couldn't open the biometric safe, but she didn't need the safe. She needed trash. She went to the shredder in the corner. It had been emptied recently, but not today. She didn't find documents, but she found something else on the desk, a notepad where Harrison had written notes during a call with Lydia the previous night. New Beginnings Agency. Dr. Vance. Payout. Dr. Vance. Alice froze. Dr. Vance was the obstetrician who had delivered her twins. He was the one who told her the boy had the cord wrapped around his neck. It was all connected. Alice needed biological proof. She ran upstairs. She took a Q-tip and gently swabbed the inside of Leo's cheek while he napped. Then she did the same for Mia. Then she did something risky. She went into Harrison's bathroom and took a hair from his hairbrush. She needed to know if Harrison was the father. If he wasn't, then Lydia had stolen the baby for some other reason. But if he was, that meant Harrison had slept with Alice? No, that was impossible. She had never met him before the restaurant. Unless... Alice remembered the clinic. It was a fertility clinic where she had gone for a checkup years ago, where she had signed up for a program to donate eggs for cash because she was broke, but then backed out. Had they taken her eggs anyway? Or had there been a mix-up? No, she had been pregnant naturally. The father was her ex-boyfriend, a guy named Mike, who vanished. Alice sealed the samples in envelopes. She needed to get to a private lab. She strapped the kids into the double stroller. We're going for a walk, she told Mrs. Higgins. Stay within the gates, Mrs. Higgins warned. Alice walked down the long driveway. As she neared the gate, a black sedan pulled up. The window rolled down. It was Lydia. And she wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits got out of the car. They didn't look like security guards. They looked like cleaners. Going somewhere, Alice? Lydia asked, stepping out of the car. She held a cane, but she didn't look like she needed it. Just a walk, Alice said, gripping the stroller handle. She scanned the area. The estate guards were at the main gate, 50 yards away. They couldn't hear. I know who you are, Lydia said, stepping closer. I should have recognized you sooner. You have the same pathetic look in your eyes that you had in the delivery room. Alice's blood turned to ice. You were there. I was. Dr. Vance is a very expensive, very discreet friend of mine. Lydia smiled. Harrison needed an heir. His wife was dead. The board was going to vote him out if he didn't show stability, a family line. He was too depressed to date. So I procured a solution. "You stole my son," Alice hissed. "You told me he died. I told you what you needed to hear. You were a broke waitress with a deadbeat boyfriend. You couldn't afford one child, let alone two. I did you a favor. I took the burden off your hands." "I want him back," Alice said, stepping in front of the stroller. "And I'm going to tell Harrison everything." "Harrison won't believe you," Lydia laughed. "You're a gold digger, a violent ex-waitress who seduced him. And besides," Lydia signaled to the two men, "you won't get the chance to tell him." The men lunged. "Run!" Alice screamed. But she couldn't run. She had the stroller. She fought. She kicked one man in the shin, hard. He grunted. She tried to unlock the stroller brakes to shove it away, but the second man grabbed her from behind, clamping a hand over her mouth. "Take the girl," Lydia commanded. "Leave the boy. We don't need the girl." "No!" Alice's scream was muffled. One of the men grabbed Mia out of the stroller. Mia started screaming, terrified. "Put her in the car," Lydia ordered. "We'll drop her off at a shelter in the next state, or maybe somewhere less pleasant." "Let her go!" Alice bit the hand, covering her mouth, and screamed. The man punched Alice in the stomach. She doubled over, gasping for air. She fell to the gravel driveway. "You have a choice, Alice," Lydia said, leaning over her. "You leave, you disappear. You never speak to Harrison again. And maybe you see your daughter again. Or you stay, you try to fight me, and the little girl vanishes forever. And I will frame you for kidnapping Leo." Lydia grabbed Alice's chin. "I own the police in this town. I own the judges. Who are they going to believe? The billionaire's aunt or the crazy waitress?" The man with Mia was getting into the car. Mia was wailing, reaching out her tiny arms toward her mother. "Mama! Mama!" Alice tried to crawl toward the car. "Mia!" The man holding Alice kicked her back down. Lydia got back into the sedan. "You have 1 hour to pack your bags and leave the estate. If you are here when Harrison gets back, Mia disappears." The car doors slammed. The sedan peeled away, gravel spraying into Alice's face. Alice lay in the dirt, bruised and bleeding. Leo was in the stroller, crying because his sister was gone. Alice pulled herself up. She looked at the retreating car. Pain radiated through her body, but something else burned hotter. Lydia had made a mistake. She thought Alice was just a waitress. She thought Alice was weak. Alice wiped the blood from her lip. She picked up Leo, who was reaching for her. "I'm going to get her back," Alice whispered to the boy. "And then I'm going to burn your aunt's world to the ground." She didn't go back to the house to pack. She didn't run away. She took out her phone. She dialed the one number she had memorized from the restaurant encounter. Not Harrison. She called the private investigator whose card she had found in Harrison's rejected pile in the library trash can earlier that day. A man Harrison had fired for getting too close to the truth about the adoption. "Hello?" A gruff voice answered. "This is Alice Mitchell," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I have the DNA, I have the witness, and I have the billionaire's son. I need you to help me find my daughter." "And why should I help you?" the investigator asked. "Because," Alice said, looking at the Sterling mansion looming on the hill, "I'm about to give you the biggest story of the century, the fall of the House of Sterling." Alice didn't go to the police. Lydia owned the police chief. She had bragged about it. Alice went to the one place people like Lydia Sterling overlooked, the gutter. Frank Miller was a private investigator who operated out of a cloud of cigar smoke and a basement office in the meatpacking district. He had been fired by Harrison Sterling for finding uncomfortable truths, and he had an axe to grind. When Alice burst into his office, bleeding, holding a baby, and demanding help. Frank didn't ask for a retainer. He looked at the baby, the spitting image of the man who fired him, and grabbed his keys. "I put a tracker on Lydia's car 3 months ago," Frank grunted as he sped his rusted sedan onto the highway. "She threatened my license. I figured I'd need insurance. Looks like it paid off." The dot on Frank's tablet was moving north toward a private airfield near the lake. "She's taking her out of the country," Alice choked out, clutching Leo so tight her knuckles were white. "She's going to make Mia disappear." "We'll catch her," Frank said, pressing the accelerator. "But we can't breach an airfield alone. We need heavy hitters." "No police," Alice warned. "I'm not calling the cops," Frank smirked. "I'm calling the one man who hates having his things stolen more than I do." Frank dialed a number. He put it on speaker. "Sterling," Harrison's voice answered. He sounded panicked. "Frank, why are you calling me? I'm in a crisis. Alice is gone. My son is gone. There was blood on the driveway." "I know," Frank said. "I'm with Alice. She has Leo. He's safe." "Put her on," Harrison roared. "Alice, if you hurt him—" "Shut up and listen," Alice screamed at the phone, cutting off the billionaire. "Your Aunt Lydia kidnapped my daughter. She beat me and took Mia because she knows the truth. We are heading to the Northfield airstrip. If you want to see your aunt before she vanishes, and if you want to know the truth about your son, meet us there. And bring your security team. The loyal ones." There was a silence on the line, a heavy, terrifying silence. "I'm 5 minutes away from Northfield," Harrison said. His voice was cold as ice. "I'm coming." The Northfield airstrip was desolate, surrounded by chain-link fences and tall grass. A private jet was idling on the runway, its engines whining. Lydia's black sedan was parked near the hangar. Alice, Frank, and baby Leo arrived just as Harrison's convoy of SUVs tore through the chain-link gate, smashing it off its hinges. The scene was chaotic. Harrison jumped out of his moving vehicle before it even stopped. He was holding a handgun, something Alice had never seen him carry. Lydia was standing by the stairs of the jet. A large man was carrying a struggling, screaming Mia up the steps. "Stop!" Harrison bellowed. His voice echoed over the roar of the jet engines. Lydia froze. She turned to see her nephew, flanked by armed guards, marching toward her like the angel of death. "Harrison!" Lydia shouted, trying to compose herself. "Thank God you're here. This woman, she kidnapped Leo. I managed to recover the girl to use as leverage, but—" "Drop the act, Lydia." Harrison aimed the gun at the man holding Mia. "Put the child down." "Now!" The henchman hesitated. He looked at Lydia. "Do it," Harrison warned, "or you won't leave this tarmac alive." The man set Mia down. The toddler ran down the stairs, sobbing, and sprinted across the tarmac. Alice broke through the line of guards and fell to her knees, scooping Mia up with one arm while holding Leo in the other. The reunion was visceral. Alice buried her face in her daughter's hair, checking her for injuries. Mia was terrified, but unhurt. Harrison walked up to Lydia. He lowered his gun, but his eyes were blazing. "Why?" he asked. "Why steal a child? Why kidnap another?" Lydia straightened her coat. She knew it was over. The mask of the loving aunt dropped, revealing the cold calculator underneath. "Because you were weak, Harrison," she spat. "You were mourning Catherine. You refused to remarry. The stock was plummeting. We needed an heir. I found a donor who matched your genetic profile. I found a desperate woman at a clinic, and I arranged it. But twins? Twins are messy, especially when the mother is trash." "She is not trash," Harrison said through gritted teeth. "She is the mother of my son." "She is a surrogate," Lydia shrieked. "An accidental vessel. The clinic made a mistake, Harrison. They used your frozen sample. The one you and Catherine left 5 years ago. I just facilitated the outcome." The world stopped spinning for Alice. She looked up from the ground, staring at Harrison. They used his sample. The pieces slammed into place. The clinic where she had gone for a simple checkup. The one that had been shut down for malpractice a year later. She remembered the vitamin shot the doctor had given her. It wasn't a shot. It was an insemination. She hadn't been pregnant by her ex-boyfriend, Mike. She had been carrying the billionaire's children all along. Harrison stared at Lydia, processing the horror of the violation. "You made her carry my children without her consent? You stole one and tried to kill the other?" "I did it for the family," Lydia yelled. "For the legacy." Harrison pistol-whipped her. It was a swift, brutal motion. Lydia collapsed to the ground, unconscious. "You are no family of mine," Harrison whispered. He turned to Alice. He saw her kneeling on the asphalt, holding 2 children who looked exactly like him. He dropped the gun. He walked over to them and fell to his knees. He wrapped his massive arms around Alice, Leo, and Mia. For the first time in years, the Ice King wept. The fallout was nuclear. Lydia Sterling's arrest dominated the news cycle for months. Charges of kidnapping, fraud, embezzlement, and illegal medical experimentation were just the beginning. The New Beginnings Agency was raided by the FBI, exposing a ring of stolen babies and falsified birth certificates. But inside the Sterling estate, the gates were closed to the world. It had been 3 months since the airstrip. Alice sat in the garden, watching Leo and Mia chase a golden retriever puppy across the lawn. The grass was green, the sun was shining, and the nightmare seemed far away. She heard footsteps behind her. Harrison walked onto the patio, holding 2 envelopes. "The lawyers finished the paperwork," Harrison said, sitting down next to her. He didn't look like a stressed billionaire anymore. He looked like a father. "Is it done?" Alice asked. "Lydia pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. She'll die in prison," Harrison said grimly. He tossed the first envelope on the table. "And the clinic doctors have lost their licenses and are facing 20 years. He held up the second envelope. "This is the one that matters." Alice took it. It was the official paternity test results, court certified. Father, Harrison Sterling. Probability, 99.9999%. Mother, Alice Mitchell. Probability, 99.9999%. "We made them," Harrison said softly, "in the most twisted, terrible way possible. We made them." Alice traced the names on the paper. "I spent 2 years thinking I was crazy, thinking I had failed my son. I used to dream about him. I used to dream about a family," Harrison said. "I had the money, the houses, the power. But I was empty. I was raising a son I thought was bought, afraid he would grow up to be like them." He reached out and took Alice's hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, which had healed from the fight on the driveway. "Alice," Harrison began, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved Leo. You saved Mia. You saved me. The lawyers. They drafted a custody agreement. Shared custody. You get a house, a monthly stipend, whatever you want." Alice pulled her hand away gently. "I don't want a stipend, Harrison. I'm not an employee anymore." "I know," Harrison said quickly. "That's not what I want either." He stood up and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. It wasn't the massive, gaudy diamond Lydia would have worn. It was a simple, elegant sapphire surrounded by 2 small stars. "I don't want a custody agreement," Harrison said, kneeling on the grass. "I want a family, a real one. I fell in love with you when you were a waitress shouting at me in a restaurant. I loved you when you were a nanny protecting my son. And I love you now as the mother of our children." Alice looked at him. She looked at the children playing in the distance, the boy she had mourned and the girl she had fought for, now together, safe. "You're asking me to marry you?" Alice asked, a smile tugging at her lips. "You know I'm messy. I break dishes. I have a temper." "I'm counting on it," Harrison smiled. "I need someone to keep me in line. Alice Mitchell, will you stay? Forever?" Alice looked at the ring, then at the man who had stormed an airfield for her, the man who was learning to change diapers and sing lullabies. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stay." Harrison slipped the ring on her finger. He kissed her, and this time there were no secrets, no lies, and no shadows hanging over them. As they embraced, Leo tripped over the puppy and let out a wail. Harrison and Alice broke apart, laughing. "Your turn," Harrison said. "No way." Alice stood up, grinning. "You're the billionaire. You can afford to pick him up." Harrison groaned, but he ran to his son, scooping him up and spinning him until the tears turned into giggles. Mia ran over to join them, and Harrison lifted her up too, holding both his miracles in his arms. Alice watched them, her hand resting on her heart. The Gilded Lily restaurant felt like a lifetime ago. The pain, the hunger, the fear, it was all gone. She had walked into hell to get her baby back, and in the process, she had found heaven. And that is the incredible story of Alice Mitchell. From a struggling waitress to the matriarch of an empire, she proved that a mother's instinct is the most powerful force on earth. Lydia Sterling thought money could buy silence, but she forgot that money can't buy the bond between a mother and her child. Alice didn't just save 2 lives that night in the restaurant. She exposed a criminal underworld and rebuilt a broken family. The DNA results proved what Alice felt in her heart. Those were her babies. Today, Alice and Harrison run a foundation dedicated to helping families affected by medical fraud, ensuring no mother ever has to go through what she did. If this story moved you, if you believe in justice, or if you just love a happy ending where the bad guys get exactly what they deserve, please hit that like button. It helps us share these stories with the world. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. What would you have done if you were Alice? Would you have risked it all in the restaurant? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.